Everyone, we're live, and I'm really thrilled to have Misha this afternoon to talk to us about Russia and Iran. And really, Misha, I just want to you kick this off. I mean, we've learned that the Russians are giving the Iranians coordinates of targets like American submarines, American naval ships, and who knows what else. What are you hearing?
I know that the Russian authorities are quite in disarray because of what is happening. Because they were, it's like the most popular word among my sources in Moscow is the word paranoia. Because Putin is not giving any clear instructions, as he usually does not. That's his type um, of ruling. He got used to not giving direct orders, but expecting his subordinates to guess what he wants them to do. And so regularly, when it's not about war in Ukraine, because he's commanding. He's running the military campaign in Ukraine himself, like micromanaging it. But the rest of the issues, domestic policy, including some delicate issues in international policy, he prefers not to give direct orders, and he is rather shocked. As far as I know, he's rather shocked by what was happening in Iran during the last 2 weeks, and there were actually no orders for no direct policy. That there is no Russian strategy about what to do. That's why
Russia is Iran's ally, supposedly, right?
In a way, but it doesn't mean that Russia is Iran's ally for a few years, but still, Iran has never been like close political partner, and Iran has never been an important consumer, obviously, of Russia's oil and gas because it's a competitor. Iran was not the ideological ally, and in a way, still for Putin, some kind of coordination with Donald Trump was still important. So he would never jeopardize his perspectives of pretending to have negotiations with Trump.
Except that if these latest reports are true, which they seem to be, then that would jeopardize his relationship.
Absolutely, because there were a lot of different plans in the general staff in the Ministry of Defense. So they are continuing doing everything they can in different tracks simultaneously. So they didn't have a new order to withdraw the previous cooperation with Iran they used to have. So they continue it the way as they think that they should have done it. Although it's clear that Putin had to do something extraordinary, and he in a way disappeared as sometimes it happens in a very critical moment. I remember I was telling you that, for example, in 2018, when a group of Wagner fighters were eliminated by American military in Syria, there was no response from President Putin for almost a month, and he was really shocked by what has happened, and he was waiting for some kind of reaction, and he did not react. He was, for example, the same in the same manner. He was shocked by assassination of Muammar Gaddafi in 2011, and a lot of people compare his reaction to what is happening right now to what has happened to Ayatollah Khamenei, to his reaction of Gaddafi assassination. So yeah, he always projects everything on himself. So he's and that's actually what everyone is discussing. does it mean that he must be more than cautious about his own fate, about his own life, because he is the person who was bragging about being immortal only last year when visiting Beijing and talking to Xi Jinping, and now the situation for him and for his inner circle looks quite different. So yeah, he is much more paranoid. He has never been a strategical player. That's my I always insist on that. He's tactics genius, not the strategist. But these days, he is much more obsessed with his personal survival.
Fascinating. Yeah, no, I read your really interesting newsletter on how, that he is worried, and Iran seems to have a successor. The Ayatollah's son seems to be his successor. The
And
question
it seems to be confirmed.
that, yes, exactly. So I read your interesting Substack about that paranoia. Well, I guess we're going to see then in real time how geopolitically this plays out, because the Ukrainians, meanwhile, are being of some military assistance to the US in this, which, Trump will notice.
Mm-hmm.
And whether or not then has any impact on what's going on in the Russia-Ukraine conflict, if that changes the way the US treats Ukraine, will be interesting to see.
No, it's for Ukraine. It's very clear. Iranian drones have been a threat to Ukraine from the beginning of the war, and actually, Iranian drones were the menace number one before Russia started producing its own drones. Iranian drones were the first danger. So for Ukraine, Iran has always been that technological force that was a real threat to Iranian civilians, to Iranian cities, to Iranian army. So that's no wonder that Ukraine has um, um, a long story of fighting against Iranians and some kind of technological knowledge. So yes, they are technologically advanced. They know how to do that. They know how to deal with Iranian technology. So they might really be really useful. And it's a very different situation from that one we used to be only last year. We might remember that exactly a year ago, President Volodymyr Zelensky was sitting in the Oval Office, and President Trump was telling him, "You have no cards." And now it seems like Ukrainians have at least some cards. They have
Yes.
experience and they have knowledge, and that's exactly the experience and knowledge that is really necessary for American military right now.
Yeah, I mean, I'd be very curious to see if Jared Kushner and Steve Witkoff have got any kind of back channel going on to Dmitriev right now, because there's definitely been back channels to the Gulf states, to Saudi Arabia and the UAE, and because the US will not be pleased by these latest reports. And
It seems like Kirill Dmitriev is not the person who is really in charge of the domestic situation. That's really interesting because you might remember I was telling you a number of times that he is really hated by a lot of people in Russian political elite, among Putin's inner circle, especially by Foreign Minister Lavrov, especially by Putin's foreign policy advisor Yuri Ushakov, and especially by generals. So he is as the person who is whose only source of any political influence, or like, it's not legitimacy, but like his force comes from Putin only because he is related to Putin through his daughter. Um, no one else, I would say, no one else respects him, and no one else listens to
Right.
him. So that's definitely not his moment. So he has no word. He has no direct possibility to affect any political decisions in the Kremlin. And I guess that, like, so he is the person with initiative. He is the person who is trying to surf, who is
Yeah.
trying to catch the wave. But now he doesn't have anything to say, because he to reflect any kind of official Russian position.
Got it.
He has to have some message to be delivered,
Got it.
and he doesn't have the message. So it's really obvious that he used to be very active previously. He was tweeting on X, although we remember that Twitter, former Twitter, now X, is officially blocked in Russia.
Mhm.
Still, this politician was very active on his X account during the last months, and now just checking his last post was February 28th, and nothing since then.
Oh, interesting. That's interesting. All right. Well, I guess we'll see how this plays out. Trump will be watching this. We'll see how this does play out, and can see what the Ukrainians continue to do. But I've been dying to ask you for several weeks now, the Epstein Russia connection. And I read your very interesting Substack about Maria Duggova. Is that how you say it?
Yes, but I must tell you another story. I must start with another story, because I was going to write about it, and somehow I didn't have time. But another person who was probably one of the most important newsmakers in Russia of the previous week, uh, former senator from Chechnya and former presidential candidate who was running against Putin in year 2000, died last year. And he was the person who was also in Epstein files. The person who called Ghislaine Maxwell his soulmate and a dear friend of him.
This is
And that
not. This is not Vitaly Churkin.
Umar Jabrailov.
Okay.
He's a Chechen politician. Vitaly Churkin passed away years ago.
Yes.
Yeah, years ago. But Umar Jabrailov was a legendary figure during the last years in Russia. Especially, he was the legendary figure during the Putin's first decade in the noughties. He was the symbol of Russian luxury. He was symbol of that billionaire style way of life, and he was bragging about him being very close to Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, and even now, even during last months, he was in his public communication. He was kind of expressing his sorrow about her and him. So he committed suicide last week.
I
He
did
was found,
see that. Yes.
yes, he was found dead in Moscow. And his daughter, who now lives in the U.S., publicly expressed her disbelief. She announced that she doesn't believe that he had committed suicide, and she says that he must have been killed by President Putin. That's a very murky story. A lot of people I talk to really believe much more in his suicide, because really, that person, it was widely known that he had a reputation of being drug addict,
Ah.
and he was known for being almost bankrupt during the last
Okay.
years. So he was the most, but he used to be the only person who used to be rumored to date with Naomi Campbell and then Monica Bellucci, and then all possible foreign celebrities, and he was bringing them to. So he was kind of Russia's Jeffrey Epstein,
Yeah, he's part of that.
or obviously he was a part of that. Obviously he was closely related, and he was like, if we can. Correct me. Can we imagine that there were some kind of regional branches of Epstein enterprise in different countries of the world? So probably he must have been in charge. He might have been in charge of that Epstein's branch in Moscow, because that was exactly the way of life. How Russian celebrities, Russian politicians, Russian businessmen wanted to live in the most fat decade of Russia's history during Putin's, I would say, first decade of his
Right.
decade
Well,
of his presidency. So it's, but I guess that his existence was really important for Putin. So if
why?
um,
Why was his existence important for Putin?
he might have been a very nice leverage. If he knew something, and definitely he knew a lot about what was happening, um, he might have been used. Uh, mm, I don't know, as leverage or as the instrument to help Trump, or to deal with some other American partners.
Well, it's certainly true, and I think sometimes this gets lost. I mean, the Jeffrey Epstein story is so complicated
Mm-hmm.
that sometimes I think this gets lost a bit. That before Epstein went to jail in 2008 or 2009, he the sex crimes he committed were mostly against American women, American
Mm-hmm.
children. When he got out of jail in 2010, he absolutely changed cultures deliberately,
Mm-hmm.
absolutely
Mm-hmm.
deliberately. And so now, for the last 10 years of his life, he surrounded himself with women from Eastern Europe, many Russians, um, some Ukrainians, um, all sorts. And I got to know one of them in particular very well, a gymnast who competed for the Russian gymnastic team, trained under Putin's girlfriend, mother of his children, Alina Kabayeva.
Mm-hmm.
And um, she told me on the record and in the podcast I made that, she was a model, Vogue cover girl, as were many of the friends that knew Epstein as well, that they viewed him very benignly because they had been used to hideous sexual abuse at really young ages in Russia, thanks to
Yeah.
some of the Russian oligarchs. And because the age of consent in many Eastern European countries is way lower than it is here. And so when they came to America and there was Jeffrey Epstein, who, yes, he wanted to have sex with them or give them sexualized massages, but he wanted to pay them and he wanted to house them and he wanted to help them with their careers. They thought this was fantastic.
Yeah,
And
that was quite
yeah,
a deal.
and so he very consciously made that shift. But to your point, where did he find this pipeline? Who was organizing it from Russia? So I think
Yeah.
that is, that's a really valid question. I also, I want to ask you about this mysterious Masha Duggova, but going back to Vitaly Churkin, the Russian's ambassador to the UN,
Mm-hmm.
now dead. I mean, I have been so struck by the emails that Epstein sent to him in 2016, sort of sticking his hand up and saying, get me in front of Sergei Lavrov. I could be really helpful to Putin. I can translate Trump. Because we know that Jeffrey Epstein hadn't spoken to Donald Trump in over 10 years at that point. So the chutzpah of Jeffrey Epstein, I think it shows you how completely without fear He was. Well, the question is, did the Russians buy that? I mean, 2016, as you know, is the year when it did seem as if there was Russian interference in the US elections. Um, so, what is your sense? I mean, I know you've written that it seems very clear Putin and Epstein never met. After, there may be all
Mm-hmm.
these threads and emails out there, but they never met, as far as you know or anyone has reported, correct?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Uh, obviously, um, first, we know that those people who were always named by American media and in Mueller report as those Russians who were trying to help Trump, who were in touch with his campaign, and the most high-ranking or the most prominent person who is usually named is Aras Agalarov, Azerbaijani Russian oligarch, and it's so for anyone who is aware of who is who in Russia. That's not a person who is close to the inner circle. That's not the person who is closer to Kremlin. He is he might have been called Donald Trump of Russia in terms of he used to be a well-known developer.
Mm-hmm.
He wanted to build Trump Tower for real as a developer, but he was in no way politically influential. He was for a period of time politically, well, matrimonially connected to the family of the president of Azerbaijan, not Russia. So we know that not only Epstein was trying to fool Russian diplomat, also all those Russians who were trying to be useful to Trump's campaign, they were fooling them. They were pretending that they were much more important. They were much more adventurers, trying to look like Russian oligarchs closer to the Kremlin, and they were not. So
Right.
it looked
Although
first it
I will say that name Oleg Deripaska
that's
comes
true.
up, and I have
That's
met
important.
Deripaska rather infamously. I have danced with Mr. Deripaska many, many, many years ago, and his bodyguards. Um,
Oleg
and
Deripaska is different, and that's important. And that's we have so many connections between Deripaska and Epstein, for example.
and Mandelson. So what I was going to tell you.
Exactly. Yeah. I
So
was going to name him. I was going to
yeah,
name him, yeah, because there is a long tradition of a long story of connections between Peter Mandelson and Deripaska. And many years ago, more than 10 years ago, Peter Mandelson had to resign from his position as European Commissioner of Trade because of his connection with Deripaska. And, and now here we go again.
right.
And
And so and Deripaska's name is all over the Mueller report, having to do with Paul Manafort, who back then was involved in the Trump campaign. He had to resign. So I mean that I guess my point is there are so many intersecting threads here. The question is, where does Jeffrey Epstein fit in, if anywhere?
um, we still, I think that we still don't know the most important parts of this jigsaw.
No.
And the communication with Vitaly Churkin means a lot, although because Vitaly Churkin seems to be one of the. So he died immediately, unexpectedly.
New
It
York,
wa-
right?
it was a heart attack, and he was quite young. I must Google. He was in his 50s, so he was not an old man. And that was a shock for everyone who knew him. And from what we know right now, that looks exactly like the person who was killed by Novichok. So we know
The same drug that
that's the way.
tried
Yeah.
to kill Navalny with.
Yes, exactly. Navalny and other Russian political figures some politicians and some businessmen died unexpectedly of heart attack in a very young age. So we have never had any proof that Shurkin was assassinated by Putin's assassin squad, but it looks like that, and so
Why?
at least his death looks very suspicious, and we don't know why. He was in office. It was uh, he died in 2017. Um, he was Lavrov right hand man and very trusted person. So he was probably in the position to deal with Epstein. At the same time, Russian diplomats are not the really trusted people. They are not. They are. Lavrov is not the person from Putin's inner circle. Some oligarchs, some personal friends are much more important than people in these positions. So he was not politically really important. That's why his death in New York looked very suspicious, and I must. There was another suspicious death, actually, of another high-ranking former diplomat who was in charge, who was the before Yuri Ushakov. He was chief foreign policy advisor to Vladimir Putin. His name was Sergei Prikodko. He died after a long illness. At a very young age. But before that, he had to resign because of the sex scandal involving Oleg Deripaska.
Yeah.
He was caught, and there was an investigation made by Navalny's team that Putin's foreign policy advisor was having time with sex workers at Deripaska's super yacht. And so we have the same people connected in many different ways. The same Russian oligarch, different Russian diplomats in charge of Russian foreign policy, and some of them unexpectedly die sometimes. So yes, we don't know quite a lot, but a lot in this coincidence of facts is very suspicious.
We know that obviously a lot of Russians aren't exposed to news in the West, but in Russia, have they heard of Jeffrey Epstein?
Definitely, but it's clear that Russian propaganda uses only small pieces of information just to prove that they have always been right. So their main slogan is like, "I told you so."
Right.
So they keep on repeating as, yes, we have always said that American political elite is corrupt and immoral, and there is an obvious moral decay of those who pretend to be liberals, and deep inside they are perverts and criminals, and that's the real face of America.
Got it.
They don't go into details. They never, obviously, never mention anything about President Putin or him being mentioned. On the contrary, I've seen in many Russian Telegram channels, propagandist Telegram channels, that all the Western politicians who pretend to be saints, they are in Epstein files, but people like Ayatollah Khamenei or Bashar al-Assad or Kim Jong-un or Putin have never been mentioned because they are morally pure.
Oh my God. So now tell me about Masha Duggova, this woman, Russian woman, who seems to be doing PR for Epstein.
Yeah, and that's really funny. That's the funniest story because she probably she might be considered to be the symbol of principles or absence of those, because she used to be a prominent member of pro-Putin's youth movement,
Right.
and probably the most famous member of that movement, called Nashi or Ours. She was a spokesperson of that movement, known for kissing Putin. At the press conference, she raised her hand and asked and said, "I love you so much. May I kiss you, please, Mr. President?" And she said yes. And then
What date is this?
uh, she was a teenager, so it was, I would say, I I forgot that was before she immigrated to. So probably it was 2008
Right.
or 2007. So she immigrated to America after 2012, I guess. But it's funny that what she started doing here, um, is in a way quite the same. She started working for Epstein as his PR person, and she was offering him um, some instruments, some ways how to whitewash, how to clear his reputation, including organizing the special prize for women who combat sexual
Is
harassment.
it possible she was the funnel for the Russian models around him?
Mm,
Is it possible?
I don't think that she was so important. I think she was, rather, if you remember a wonderful TV show about Anna Delvey, which was on Netflix a couple of
Yeah,
years
indeed.
ago. I think that's that scale of a Russian adventurer. So yes, um, she is an amazing. Um, yeah, but I really doubt that she might have been a mastermind.
Right.
Um, so
Right.
she. Mhm.
But it is an extraordinary story how she comes out of Russia, having been part of this political group, massive supporter of Putin, seems to do a complete U-turn, moves to the US, but within a very, very short space of time. I mean, she gets to Epstein right because she becomes indispensable to some of the Silicon Valley um, CEOs. I mean, that's what she's doing. She's giving tech the tech industry PR advice.
Mm,
That's
yeah.
that's a pretty big, fast climb for someone who in 2008 was kissing Putin and um, sort of the face of the young pro-Putin movement. Am I wrong?
No, no, I think you're right. I think you're right. It's surprising. It's surprising, and
That's one word.
yeah, I think I'm afraid that they are that at least sometimes there are now and then we are getting news about Russian women who are being used or have been used as honey traps by Russian intelligence. I don't mean that every it's clearly that the number of those uh, r- beautiful Russian spies is very limited, but definitely we see that was used by Russian intelligence of using those not so principled young ladies
Mm.
to work in America in different fields. Um, it's very hard to guess if she was working. Probably she was working alone because, for example, I compared her to Anna Delvey because Anna Delvey is a clear example of some kind of self-made um, woman who wanted to climb to the top without really abiding to any kind of moral standards. Among those women might have been those who had some help from Russian intelligence. And few months ago, there was a story of of a Russian woman named Noma Zarubina, who was working for Russian intelligence and who was participating in some protest rallies of Russian opposition in America, who was pretending to be an oppositional activist and human rights defender and critic of Putin's regime, but at the same time was working
Right.
For Russian government. And now she's arrested because she was arrested because she was flirting with FBI agent and was at least sexting him and like revealed some when she was sending him drunk text messages, he revealed some information she should not.
Wow. So, well, it seems like there's an awful lot of work for an investigative journalist to do with all these concentric circles and threads about Russia, Epstein, all of it. But I also wanted to ask you, because we haven't spoken in a while, and since we last talked, it emerged that the poison that killed Navalny, right, was this frog's egg from Brazil.
Mm-hmm.
Um,
Ecuador.
Ecuador. So what does that tell you? What does that mean? I mean, were you surprised?
No, I was not. It was more or less clear from the beginning. I think that we have to learn much more, and uh, the truth is terrifying. I know that a lot of information has been disclosed. For example, how Russian authorities were trying to conceal the fact that how they were trying not to give Navalny's body to his mother, and they were really trying not to prevent the funeral. They were trying to keep the body to bury it secretly and to prevent any kind of independent analysis. They would try. They did something to the body to make all those poisonous um, substances untraceable. So yeah, it's quite terrible. And still, I think that we will have this investigation unfolding, and we will for sure. Now we know how it happened. We know that President Putin was the person who gave that order. We know that he gave that order right after he met Roman Abramovich and had the last negotiation about the potential swap. And Abramovich was the first person actually who dared to tell Putin that one of the names listed in that swap list was Navalny's name, because before that, all the FSB officers just didn't dare to mention Navalny's name because they knew how Putin hated him, and Putin never wanted to hear Navalny's name. So yeah, the moment
In the
when
context of being in the context of being given his freedom as a
absolutely,
prisoner.
absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the moment when Putin heard Navalny's name, he said, "Yes, I agree," to Abramovich. And the moment when Abramovich left the room, he gave the order to eliminate Navalny. So unfortunately, it's a tragical irony. But without that, we don't know what would have happened without that swap, without that plan. But in a way, the intention to save him killed him. It doesn't mean and it doesn't mean that anyone is to blame for that except for Vladimir Putin. Yes,
Yeah.
definitely everyone who was trying to make that swap possible were trying to save Navalny and other political prisoners. So many political prisoners have been rescued,
Yeah.
and still we remember that so many political prisoners remain in Russian prisons. So many political prisoners are dying in Russian prisons. I don't know if you want me to to start that list. There are teenagers blamed for standing up against Putin, like 15 years old children, or 14 years old. There are very old and gravely ill pensioners. There are people who are starving. There are people who are being tortured. Well-known theater director Jenny Berkovich is not allowed to get in touch with her family, and she's given one phone call a month, and she's in a soldier confinement for a number of months. So it's like it's still going on, and basically we so I I need to use this opportunity just to remind us that yes, we are in hell, and everything what is happening in this world is hell, and we have so many updates from everywhere, from Ukraine, from Iran, um, and yeah, it's pretty depressing to see
Yeah.
so many people dying. But our old problems are still with us.
Yeah.
Thousands of political prisoners are still in Russian prisons for nothing, for just speaking up, for just standing with blank sheets of paper, for posting on Facebook or Twitter, or for just talking to their neighbor who wrote a denunciation.
Really, really good reminder, Misha. That's why I love talking to you, because you put the world and this country actually in perspective. Because no matter how bad we think we've got it, you're sitting inside a Russian prison for doing nothing. Arguably, you're trapped in a system where there's no hope. I think. Oh, somebody sent a question saying, "Is there a chance that Epstein has those same toxins in his body?" I doubt it. That we would know that would have come out in a US autopsy. But that's my response. All right, Misha, thank you.
Thank you,
Uh,
Vicky.
we will convene again when we learn more about Russia, Iran, and the rest of it.
Absolutely. Thanks so
Thanks,
much.
everyone. Take care. Bye.